Welcome, everyone, to Survivor Speak, Leaving, Healing, and Reclaiming Life After Religious Trauma. Um, I'm David Morris, as I mentioned, Lake Drive Books founder and publisher. We're an indie book publishing imprint specializing in books that help you heal, grow, and discover. I'm joined this evening by two amazing authors for a time of insights, sharing, and community, all on the topic of leaving toxic faith systems, finding healing, and building meaningful life. If it's big topic, big topic. We'll break it down though, right? Right, panelists.
Yes.
If you're comfortable, please leave your video on, but your mic's off. But there's no requirement either way, other than mics being off, please. We'll take some time to hear from each panelist, but also an opportunity for you to ask questions. Would love for you to engage, even during the chat. We'll be monitoring what's being said there. After at least after about 40 minutes or so, we'll take questions. Let me introduce our panelists. Melissa Duge Spiers is an award-winning essayist, screenwriter, and advocate for topics of religious abuse and resilience, utilizing her online platforms on TikTok and Instagram, known as the Glory Hole, to raise awareness and help others find healing. She's the author of Holy Disobedience, Sex, Sin, and Secrets in the Biggest Church No One Knows. Happened to be published by Lake Drive Books. She holds a BA in English Literature from Barnard College and is based in California. And then Katherine Spearing is the founder of Tears of Eden, a nonprofit supporting survivors of spiritual abuse, and is a certified trauma recovery practitioner. With a Master of Arts in Religion and Cultures, Katherine is the author of A Thousand Tiny Paper Cuts, The Subtle Insidious Nature of Spiritual Abuse and Life on the Other Side. For 5 seasons, she hosted the groundbreaking podcast, also from Lake Drive Books, by the way. She hosted the podcast Uncertain, pioneering pivotal conversations around abuse in churches. Katherine is based in Missouri. I will be posting places where you can go find both Melissa and Katherine online here in just a minute into the chat, as well as subscribing to the Lake Drive Books newsletter if you're so inclined. Way to keep up on authors just like Melissa and Katherine. I'll just start by opening by saying that at Lake Drive Books, we are publishing books, working with authors, getting proposals that are all about how our institutions are not changing with the pace of our world or not keeping up with the way our world is changing. So just said the same thing twice. Um, and how that leaves many of us sort of on our own to find growth and identity and community. It's been kind of a turbulent time, no doubt. A lot of change going on, and it's such a recurring theme with so many expressions. I think it may be. I would say it's probably one of the core spiritual tasks of our time is to find out who we are, how we feel, where we belong, what we like, what we can discover. And I hope we talk about a lot of that. We're not here just to talk about the struggles, but also about where we go with the struggle. So let me first start by turning it over to our panelists and just tell us, Melissa and Catherine, just a little bit about your background. You both have different backgrounds, but similar patterns in them. And so they're very different too, which is why I think it'd be good for you to touch base a little bit on your religious background, particularly just briefly, and then what you're up to today in the world.
I'm going to let Catherine go first. We'll just go alphabetically. So, okay, before M.
Okay, sounds good. And we both start with SP last
Yeah,
names,
right.
so
Exactly.
we couldn't
Spiers
do
and
last
something.
names. Hello, I am Katherine Spearing. Thank you for the introduction. Very excited to be here to chat. I love talking about life after abuse and building a thriving life after abuse. That's one of my favorite things to talk about right now. I grew up in a high control religious environment. I call it a cult. Very extreme high control Christianity. I left that when I was in my late 20s and fell into just good old mainstream evangelicalism. thought I'd found, safety and a family, and then found out very quickly so many of the things that I had experienced in the high control religious environment that I'd grown up in were also in mainstream evangelicalism. They just were a lot more subtle, and people were a little bit nicer about it. So I left that when after working at a church that was very abusive, and started talking. While I was there, I was talking to a lot of people all over the country, all over the world, from friends and colleagues that I'd made along the way, and just started hearing similar stories to what I had experienced, and then started looking for resources and organizations that were helping this population of people, because it just seemed like it was just a massive group of people who had been abused by the church or by religious organizations. Didn't really find anything, and this was like in 2019, so right before COVID started. And so I started making plans to start a nonprofit that was just focused on people who had been abused in the church. That became Tears of Eden. I later became certified as a trauma recovery practitioner. I work with women who have been impacted by the patriarchy, and I also work with artists and creatives who have religious trauma. Really enjoy that. And we were talking right before this. I do a lot of theater, attending theater, and then also performing as an improviser. I'm also an author. My first book was fiction. My second was not fiction, A Thousand Tiny Paper Cuts. And then I'm back to working on fiction again. So that's me and where I am. Yay!
Oh,
Look at
Thank you,
that.
Kathy.
yes, look at that.
And it's on the phone.
Yay.
Yay. Is that from Libby? It looks like it's from Libby. Yes.
That's awesome. Ah, look at you. You came prepared with all your props. I love it. So I'm Melissa Duge Spiers, and I grew up fourth generation Seventh-day Adventist, which is again, I call it a high control cult religion, but it is, they would call themselves a standard Protestant Christian religion. I left it at 18 and thought that I was just done. I didn't need to do anything else that was in my rearview mirror. And I went on and I led a secular life for 3+ decades. And in the middle of those 3+ decades where I was just free and living my life, I found out that my father, who had been a pastor in the Seventh-day Adventist Church when I was a tiny child, had been a child predator. And he had groomed and preyed upon several teenage girls. And so that threw me into kind of a very disconnected, very slow, drawn out deconstruction process over the next, until very recently, where I would ignore it for a long time. I started writing my memoir then just because I am a writer, but I didn't intend to publish it. It was just to process what was going on with me. My family wouldn't talk about my dad's stuff. I didn't know any other ex-Adventists. There was no such thing really as deconstruction that I knew of when I started. So I was just trying to figure it all out by myself. And that was my writing process, but that was also my ignoring process. So I would go several years with just denial and not, I'm fine, nothing to see here. And then around COVID, I got online and I thought, well, I'm just going to start accounts and start talking about this weird church that I grew up in, because nobody ever seems to know about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's absolutely enormous. My little tagline on my book is Sex, Sin, and Secrets in the Biggest Church No One Knows. And, it's significantly larger than the Mormons. It's larger than the SBC. It's huge, and no one ever knows about it. So I started out talking about oh, we weren't allowed to eat pepper or mustard, or we weren't allowed to swim on Saturdays. And then very quickly it became, even though I wasn't really ready to talk about my dad's story, it became all of the very dark and seamy sides of Adventism, which there is a ton. And so I started to focus on their child predator problem. And then from there, I discovered I really hadn't deconstructed. And so I spent all of COVID and the next couple of years kind of officially deconstructing, getting into therapy, figuring out all of the religious grooming and patterns that I had been living out just in my own life. So that's my history. And then what I'm doing now is I have a second memoir that David and I have been talking about, possibly in the works. It's about half written. And I also am just jonesing to go to fiction eventually. That's got my little list of all of my fiction books that I want to write. But for now, I'm in the memoir space still.
And you have a big interest in vintage clothing, I happen to
Oh,
know
yes. Yeah, totally.
today.
I ever since I was about 12, I have been a vintage clothes collector, and I sell them now a lot, and kind of am a dealer. And I give people their vintage fix. And yeah, so then I also I'm not wearing it tonight. This is not vintage, but usually that's my thing. I wear vintage all the time.
So follow Melissa and Catherine on social media, but Melissa has every once a week, a certain day you're wearing something, right?
Well, I wear vintage clothes in every single one of my videos, but every once in a while, usually it's only about once a month,
Oh,
if you see me wearing pink velvet in the video, you'll know I'm going to talk about the vintage clothes that I've been wearing for the past whatever, and
got it.
I'll show my latest like acquisitions and what I've been wearing. I used to do it every video. I would say, I'm
Yeah,
wearing blah blah blah, and then I'd go
yeah,
into the video, but that just got
yeah.
too disconnected when I
Too
was talking
much.
about abuse and stuff. It was really hard to pivot. Like today, I'm wearing
Yeah,
vintage Yves Saint Laurent, and now
yeah,
we're going to talk about how this child was horribly abused. It
yeah.
did go.
And
So
we're
now you see the pink
yeah.
velvet, it's going to be a fun, vintage, whatever.
Well, speaking of pivoting, that's what we're doing here. But it's good to bring in, the light parts of our lives as well as these are the things that bring us joy and help us discover things about ourselves that we maybe didn't know about before. And you both have passions that you follow, and I'd love to talk about that more later. Excuse me. Let's talk about I know both of you when you post about when you write, post, talk about your experiences that you'll get comments. Obviously, it's on social media, which can be kind of unrestrained at times. Um, but you'll get comments, and it's just they're revealing comments that where people say, "Well, that's your experience. The church as a whole is fine." Um, it's just this one or a few bad apples that we need to be more vigilant about. But I know both of you would say, no, there are systemic issues at stake here. The bad behavior isn't just sometimes allowed into the church. Sometimes faith communities as a whole there's aspects of them that encourage and create the bad behavior as well. Um, Maybe start with you again, Catherine. Why do you think there's like what do you see as systemic to your background, and why do you think that systemic abuse is there?
When I started Tears of Eden, I was starting it because I realized how rampant it was and that it wasn't isolated to just like my experience or a few friends' experience. It just seemed to be everywhere. And I had no idea once starting that journey that I would find out how incredibly rampant, even more so than I even thought at the beginning of that journey, so embedded into the system. And I talk about this a lot in my book, A Thousand Tiny Paper Cuts, of the theology itself is soil in which the abuse grows. And so I'm at a point where if there is a safe church, that's the outlier. Like the abusive church is not the outlier. It's so because of the theology itself, it's just so baked into the theology in general within evangelicalism. Yeah, so that if I encounter someone, I usually get people who just like trying to like slip it in of like, well, you just had a bad experience, or you should try my church. My church is safe. I think you'd really like the pastor at my church. Like that is usually like how people are slipping it in. And I don't know that typically know the stories behind, that, but I will venture to say I believe that you believe your church is safe. That is where I would come if they ask my opinion, and I honestly wouldn't want to give it. Honestly, I'm just like that's fine. But yeah, it's very systemic. It's very embedded into everything because the theology itself creates it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I think
yep.
I dovetail right there on Catherine. It's kind of uh it's not the flaw in the system, it is the system, it is the theology. And the fact that people have to protest so hard already indicates that there is a problem. And I love that, oh, bad apples, because they all just say, oh, I probably get, several people commenting a day, it's just a bad apple or two. And it's like, you do understand that the rest of that statement is a few bad apples spoils the bunch, like it rots the whole bushel. And it's really true. And I'm not a therapist, so I can't come at it and I never went to theology school, so I can't come from it from that. I just come from it from a very practical, experiential point. And when I started looking at the abuse in the Adventist church, I started going through every Adventist school that I knew had an abuse scandal in it. Every family that I knew someone who had been abused, and then I started hearing all these stories. And it's just simply, and then you start to extrapolate. Abuse doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a boss that enables it or looks the other way. There's a wife that looks the other way. There's, parents who may know but feel like they can't protect their child. There's a teacher who was told, and then, every single one abuse case has multiple enablers, either just silent because they don't know what to do, or proactively enabling because they're an abuser too. And so it's, these organizations are for-profit businesses, and their business is to project perfection. So yeah, we're not going to look bad. We're not going to look bad at any cost. And unfortunately, the cost is really high for victims, and it's systemic.
Maybe it would be helpful to do a little definition of abuse. Catherine, I know this is something you do every day. It's in the top of mind. Your book talks about spiritual abuse. How do you define spiritual abuse in a way that's helpful for the people that you work with at Tears of Eden, for example?
Yeah, so starting with like just kind of like a very simple definition, when God and the Bible are deliberately used to cause shame, harm, used to coerce, used to manipulate, and there's an intentional part of that that's happening, and there are plenty of folks within these institutions that are intentionally wielding the Bible from a position of power to coerce and manipulate and to control. And then there's another layer that I consider to be way more painful, of the folks within the system who are good, decent human beings who do the same thing, believing that they're doing it in the name of God and that they're doing the right thing. And I consider that to be so painful. And as Melissa mentioned, you find an abuser, that abuse doesn't happen in a vacuum. There is an entire system around that abuse that has enabled that and created that to some extent. And that is what makes spiritual abuse incredibly painful and incredibly confusing to unpack. What happened, and oftentimes we only figure out that something happened long after the damage has already been done, because it is so confusing and it is so baked into the system.
These are things that we do unaware. We're not always aware that our church might be complicit in a non-inclusive stance, a non-loving stance, a stance that involves a lot of emotional shame from even an early age. And it's just incumbent upon us. And even you would think the tenets of our faith would help ask us to be more self-aware, to educate, to learn. That's why everybody's here tonight too, I think, is to just continue to learn. We're all on a process of learning. Not that that necessarily excuses complicity or bad behavior, but it is a process of growth no matter where you are. Um, well, let's move at a pretty good clip here. What what was it like for you both? Try to think back a little bit as to in the months just after we started getting a clue. You talked about this a little bit, Melissa, about when you started deconstructing. What was it like for you, if you can think back, when you first started leaving the environment that you were in? Or is there something that brought on the event without maybe getting into too many difficult details, but was there something specific that happened? And how did you handle that in the months or years afterward? Melissa, would you mind?
Going first? Sure. I think my leaving was two parts. The first was, when I was 18, and that was purely just getting out of the social control of combination of church and family. And I think that was just sheer, 18-year-old relief, thinking like, we, I did it. And sailing onward. And that brought the second stage, the actual deconstruction stage, much, much later. And I remember being that was just, less than 10 years ago that started, and um being so overwhelmed and so confused because I could trace the embedded religious programming in just about everything in my life, just the way that I had no boundaries, or the way that I had developed relationships, even the way I had raised my children, even though I hadn't raised them religious at all, but just my attitudes and my world pattern view. And so that deconstruction process was extremely complicated and painful because it came with a lot of regret, I think, that I had gone so far without realizing, so long in my life without realizing that that was what needed to happen to set me free.
Hmm. Thank you. I know in your book you talk a lot about, um, and part of what's amazing in your book is as your publisher and someone who worked on the book too, was that process of you don't know who you are when you leave. You don't know where to go, where to turn.
Yeah,
You weren't equipped with boundaries. You knew you needed to make a change, but you weren't equipped for what to do after that change.
yeah,
Katherine, you certainly must see this in your work at Tears of Eden, if not for in your own life. Um, I think that honesty is really powerful in your book, Melissa, that you go into some pretty tough, rough moments in life.
mhm,
Um, it's very candid, and I think it's very human and very vulnerable for you to say those things, but also it's just evidence that, you know, it takes sometimes the cure is worse than the problem.
yeah,
And there you have to sort of find your own way through this, and you're not and it's hard. Uh,
yeah.
I know maybe I just said it all for you there, but any comment on that?
Well, I mean, you summarized it absolutely. I mean, I still am struggling, and I know we're going to talk a little bit later about like what does healing mean going forward, but I still struggle with boundaries. I still struggle with identifying my feelings. There are just things that you didn't know you needed, and identifying those is so much harder than identifying how the church hurt you or the theology that you think is wrong, but these are the really personal ways that the religious abuse affected and maimed you, kind of. And healing that part is it's really hard because you have to know how to identify it first, and I just didn't for so long.
How about you, Catherine? Your experience um, in the months or early years after shifting out of the community that you're in, and I know yours yours involved in particular, you know, family members that you're not in contact with anymore. Um, it's in your book. And um, you know, what was that experience like for you?
I think when we, not I think, I know when we grow up in high control religion, we have people telling us what to do all the time. We have people, this is the right way. And whether it's like explicitly told to us or it's just embedded into the system, on Sunday, we're supposed to smile and we're supposed to be happy, even if we are depressed and dying inside. We show up, we be happy. All of these implicit messages of what is the right thing to do, how to behave, how to show up. When we leave, we look for someone to tell us how to deconstruct, how to heal, how to do all of the things and do this the right way and tell us what is next. And I think it's so important, and I did discover this too, to hang out in the I don't know land as long as possible. Hang out in the ambiguity. Our nervous system is looking for certainty, and that is one thing that high control religion offers is certainty. But that certainty is short-lived, and that certainty temporarily soothes our nervous system before it causes more damage. And to have an opportunity to just be in the I don't know, be in the ambiguity, be in the uncertain. The podcast that I started was called Uncertain. Did not realize how meaningful that was at the time when it started, but that word just continues to come up, and how powerful it is to be able to sit and not know and just let yourself be in the I don't know. I think that's so critical, so important. And I think one of the reasons why we end up going back to other high control groups, be it yoga or tarot or therapy, to tell us what to do, is because we're so used to having someone tell us what is right and wrong. And I think it's so scary and it's very disorienting to not know, but eventually it does, become this place that is just very free and very inclusive and very expansive and very abundant, with so many possibilities and so many we're talking about these really horrible human beings that we encountered in these systems, and and then to access people who are just beautiful, wonderful human beings who are outside of that system. I think that's really cool. Like that the church doesn't have a monopoly on good people. Like that's been really refreshing for me, to discover that. Um, yeah, so there's been it's been quite a journey, on the other side of it, but I would say that's probably one of the most beautiful things, is that ability to be able to just be able to say I don't know and not have this panic surge of just like,
Mhm.
it can just be I don't know, or I'm exploring, or I haven't figured that one out yet. And then that is totally okay and totally acceptable, and necessary, I feel like, on the other side.
That sounds like it was a strategy for you too, personally, Catherine, and it sort of also cuts yourself some slack. Like
Yeah.
I don't have to figure out my healing right now. I just got to live life. I think
Yeah.
one of the things that's remarkable, everyone, about Catherine is, and this is in your book, it's part of your story. I feel like I got to be careful. I'm not saying things that are too personal,
Spoilers.
but
Spoilers.
well, there's spoilers. That's true. But I think one of the things, well, there's only like, okay, there's only so many of us here, so, and some of them have the book already. But I've just always been amazed at both of you and what you've done in your lives. Catherine, in your case, you put yourself through college remotely without your parents knowing, parents who didn't necessarily want you in college.
Mhm.
And so even at that age, and you did it probably some years later than most people
Yeah.
do. I don't remember the
I
details,
started at
like
26. Yes. Mhm.
I
26. Yeah.
love that. I just
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. And I think that we could even move into that a little bit, but you know, that's indicative of that process of growth going forward. I mean, in a way, you probably felt it was necessary for you to start building a life of your own. Well, I need a college degree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I currently do trauma-informed career coaching, and I'll work with women on, finances and careers and stuff like that, because that's a huge part of my healing process. Was learning how to write a resume, and learning about investments, and figuring out how to do college without any debt, and figuring out how to just develop life skills and empower myself to build the life that I want to live. That was not the life that I was allowed to live or supposed to live. Was not the godly woman life at all. The life that I was being conditioned to live, both in my family system and also in the church system. I'm not doing any of it, and it's not necessarily out of totally out of spite. Some of it is, sure.
Not
Um,
totally.
yeah, it's not completely out of spite, but quite a bit of it is just authentic to who I am, and that who I am wasn't accepted in that space. And I'm so glad, because meant that my body wasn't able to adapt. And eventually I extricated myself, just because it was that or shrivel up and die. And I'm so glad, like, when we find ourselves in that position of, like, we do not fit, this place doesn't can't fit me. It's very painful to not belong and to lose that, but it's also, on the other side, a gift, because it's what helped us get out.
Find freedom. But
Mm-hmm.
also when you do something like go start signing yourself up for remote college at the age of 26, you're claiming a certain individual power. And I think that was a key event for you, sort of a key practical step you took to claim individual power. Melissa, what about for you? What would you say was like a key life change, whether you knew it was happening or not, that sort of, you know, took, put you in a little bit faster mode into claiming your own individual power?
Oh my gosh. For me, it was I mean, the biggest step, and it was one of the most recent, was getting rid of men in my life. I mean, it's a blunt thing to say, but I don't think I had been in that conditioning for so long, going on almost 5 decades at that point, that I think even if I had been in a healthy relationship, which I totally was not, I was in like the worst of the most awful abusive relationships. Um, I don't know that I would have known, like we were talking about before, like how to define who I was, what I wanted, what I felt, where my boundaries were. I think I was so conditioned to people please around men in my life that I would not have been able to figure those out. I needed to be
Mm.
alone, and I had never been alone my entire adult life. And so that was the big one. From there, my healing exploded. My self-knowledge exploded. Um, everything.
Mm. Well, what if we shifted to some of those things that give us power, whether they're big ones like that, like a big decision about men or a big decision about college? I want to get to something you posted on social media this week or today even, Catherine, about your car. What happened with your car
What
and what
happened?
and what and what did you have to say about it?
I got robbed. Somebody crawled up under my car and took my catalytic converter.
No.
Catalytic converter because it
Catalytic
has it
converter.
has special metals in it. And so people,
I don't know anything about this. I didn't even
Yeah.
know this was possible. Yeah, and it was annoying, and it was frustrating, and I had a total car catastrophe last week. Multiple things happening. It all happens all at the same time. Um, had to have my car towed twice. It was really rough, but one of the things that it wasn't was anxiety inducing, because um as I mentioned earlier, just like career and finances being really important to me, um I have worked really hard to get myself to a place of financial stability, and then work with have an emergency fund for such a time as this. And it's like, as soon as it happened, as soon as I found out how much it was going to be, it was a $2,000 car week last week, guys. As soon as I found out, I was just like, this is why I have an emergency fund. This is what it is for. And it just felt so good. Um, yeah, I just like that feeling of like, oh, I can take care of myself. Like this is not fun, but I have the resources to take care of myself. It was there was so much there was peace, this like peace
Love
thing
it.
that you're not supposed to feel at this moment. That happened because of it. Yeah, and I would say that that's a big part of my journey is finances being financial abuse being a part of my journey, and then me working on my financial security being a part of that life afterwards, and the healing afterwards of giving myself that security and that power through money, which is not something we really talk about a whole lot, but has been
Right.
a big part of
And
my
you've made decisions and even sacrifices, if I may say so. You work remotely, but you live in a major city in the Midwest, but that's not where you work. You find remote work that works for you, wherever that might be. You find a job that maybe you weren't it didn't exactly train for, hadn't thought, well, I'd be there
yeah,
doing this, but it's the right but it's work where you find a good boss, a
yeah,
good team, hopefully,
yeah.
and you enjoy the people, you're getting a good paycheck, you're not paying too much for rent, and you're able
Mhm.
to you're able to put your life back together so then you can go do other things too and have that
Yes.
sense of security. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
amazing how you've done all that. Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely very strategic of wanting and is very informed by being in spaces where I had so little power and so little control, that creating a life where I have this agency and autonomy is really important to me. It's a value that I have. It's not a value that everyone has, but it's a value for me. So it's really important. When I'm making choices, I know that that's important to me, and so that's how that
Yeah.
leads into
Yeah.
decisions. Um, just a values based life.
Yeah. Melissa, something that you've done recently that I was very impressed by, and this is a little bit more personal, so stop me if you'd rather, or
Oh,
shift it somewhere else. Yeah. But as
you
your
know
book was
me.
come
There's rarely anything off limits. Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, true. Well, but that's what I'm talking about here. Um, the fact that you're able to be so candid and open. So as your book is coming out, your parents are they're still in your lives, very elderly, but they're still in your lives, and yet there's a lot in them about them, especially your father, in your book. And you took it upon yourself to go and tell them and say, this is what's coming out. They're only going to grasp that information so much, but you still felt as though you had to do that. Talk about that decision-making process that you went through and how it brought you power or health.
Yeah, it's been an odd up and down journey with that book and that story. I'm generally the only person in the whole extended family who has ever confronted anyone in the family about my dad's story. I confronted my parents twice about it, to try to get more information. I tracked down the victim, and befriended her. So, to an extent, it's all painful and it's all horrible. But I have to confront things. I can't just, there's a big family tradition of just burying heads and not saying anything and just coasting along. And, so part of my starting the official deconstruction process about 6 years ago or whatever was going into therapy, and now I have two different therapists. And I was talking about to one of them about the fact that my parents are failing now. They have health problems. My mom has Alzheimer's. My dad's not too terribly far behind in that. And I was kind of hoping maybe by the time the book came out, they just weren't going to be cognizant, and My therapist just said, no, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to them to let them know what's coming. And you don't want to just hit someone upside the head with that. Uh, it is their, particularly my dad's. My mom was quite a victim, but she also then victimized the rest of us about it. Um, and I saw the value immediately in that. I was like, you're right. I owe it to them to let them know it's coming. And I owe it to myself to kind of close the circle. Like I have now written this, it's going out into the world. And to an extent, this isn't even my story anymore. Once it's published, it's out there,
Mm.
it's everyone else's. And it's my parents and told from my perspective. So I went down and I confronted my dad, and I told him that it was his responsibility at this point to protect my mother. He had not protected her in all of the way along, and she is too mentally fragile to process it at all now. And so I said, this is coming. And he didn't know that I was friends, that I had tracked down the victim. And it was a very painful conversation for reasons that I didn't anticipate. I really didn't anticipate my dad, who I still thought was a very intellectual, smart person for all of his failings. Lack of mental sophistication had never been his thing, right? And he gave me all of the stupidest, most awful, horrible excuses for the relationship, for what happened. And it was just like, wow. And I thought, do I confront him? Do I stop him at every like, well, she wasn't a child. She was very grown up for her age, And do I stop him and just be like, fucking, and I thought, you know what? No, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to tell him about the book. I'm doing that. Not going to change his mind. He's been building this castle for himself forever. Um, and so I didn't. I said what I had to say, and I let him say all of his platitudes and things. And the minute he heard the name of the victim that I was friends with, I think it shut off his cerebral processes, and all he wanted to do was defend himself. I'm still not even sure he heard me about the book, but it doesn't matter. I did what I needed to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we're all rooting for you in that, and thank you. Yes, your courage is awesome, both of you. Well, uh, we'd love to have any comments and questions for our panelists. We're getting down to the last 15 minutes or so.
Oh
But
no.
while we're waiting, and thanks for the comments that are there so far. Um, really appreciate it. I do know that one of the things that is when you're coming out of high control, tight-knit religious community, one of the things is you don't necessarily know who you are, what you like, what you don't like. Um, when one of the examples, I'll give a harmless example. Like before the days of remember Napster in the music world? Remember when like streaming started happening in music, and you had all these choices, and it was really amazing. I mean, before that, I was always like a classic rock radio station person. And it wasn't until that came along that I started realizing, oh, I like alt country. I like Steve Earle, Lucinda Williams, John Prine. I didn't even know about any of these people, and they've been around forever. And I don't have to like Steely Dan if I don't want to on the classic rock. And so that sense of choice was wonderful. I think that's one of the great things about the digital era that we live in right now, along with all the challenging things. Um, Catherine, how about for you? I mean, I know you've got things where you have this sense of discovery. What is it that I can go do? What can I learn? What are you really into right now that you're enjoying?
Too many things. Uh, uh, yeah, when going back, harkening back to career and finances being a journey, being part of my journey, I was thinking today, actually made an Instagram video about it today about hiring a career coach in my late 20s. It was after I graduated from college. part of it was to just learn things about like a cover letter and writing a resume. And then part of it was there was a question on the table of, do I go into ministry, which I did end up doing, and then, or do I become a writer, because both of those things were things that I wanted to do. And the main question that I was asking this career coach is, which one should I choose? And the career coach asked me the very life-changing question, which was, why can't you do both? They both seem very important to you. Why can't you do both? And it never occurred to me that I could do both. And I think that our world is very binary. I think the high control religion is binary, black or white, good or bad, yes or no. And I think it's so fun to let both and be true all the time, and to get to try things and experiment. And I think desires for women, especially on the other side of high control religion, are so difficult because we're told what we're allowed to want. And if we don't want those things, then there's something wrong with us. And so figuring out what you want on the other side of it is really, really, really fun. It's really fun. I keep discovering things about myself. You mentioned vintage clothes, Melissa. I realized literally last year that I like clothing. Like, I like clothes.
I saw your video on that.
Right?
You said something, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, I like clothes. I like shoes. I like clothes. It never occurred to me that I like clothes. I had always been drawn to it, but it was like something that like frivolous that you like weren't allowed to really like think about or whatever. And then liking it in like my terms, like not, I don't like fashion. I don't know anything about fashion. Just I like clothes. Like I like that thing. That looks cool. I want that. I don't know if it's in style or not. I just want it. And so like always discovering new things about yourself, which I think is fun. I think it's fun. And yes, it's sad that so much of this got suppressed in these really high control spaces, but now we get to know ourselves, and we get to know ourselves on our own terms without anyone telling us what it's supposed to look like or how it's supposed to be. And that is so fun. That's so fun to me. I love it.
Yay.
Shelly Ann comments, thank you, Shelly Ann. I honestly did not think I would be alive past age 24 because I was certain the second coming would happen. I never considered a career. And there you go, right there, Shelly Ann. You're putting together those two things.
Yep.
You know, so much about if you had a religion that talked about the second coming, what you would forestall your own growth, your own development, your own interests, things like a career. Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Melissa? What are you into these
What am
days?
I all excited about?
Yeah.
Well, if I think probably most people here, I think follow me or have read my book or at least know a little bit of my story. You know, I'm a runner, and I'm getting back into running races, like just silly races, you know, like turkey trots. And I'm going to Napa to run a half marathon that's like, I don't, from one town to the other, and it's got like winery stops all the way along and things like that. Like not just running to like process my trauma or running to
Did
get
you
away
get a
from this
glass
or
of
that.
wine while you're running?
Well, they have all these little wineries, so you like
That would
stop
be
and do
weird.
tastings or
Yeah.
something, and then
Sorry.
so yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I'm gonna go do it, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find the fun and the social about something that was always very kind of pure and in my head for me. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going down to Monsterpalooza in Los Angeles, which I'm so excited about. My daughter, ever since, and I usually don't talk about my kids at all, but this is a little safe space. She has, ever since she was like 3 or 4, wanted to be a special effects makeup artist. Like that's all she's ever wanted to be in life. And now she's heading toward that as a career. She's done some internships on movies and things. And she doesn't want to do like pretty makeup. She wants to do like eyeballs exploding and guts like spilling everywhere. And so Monsterpalooza is where all of the FX makeup artists for a whole weekend, they're there and they've got their projects and they've got their models all made up, and they've got, so we are going to have the best time. You can tell I'm so excited about it. Like it's never been terribly an interest of mine, but I'm excited about her interest. And I mean, it's art. It's the most crazy, crazy art ever. And So I'm excited about that. And I'm really excited about trying to write a novel because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I write essays, and a memoir is sort of like a large essay, and fiction is, and and I've written screenplays, which are fiction, but a novel, that's like the great American novel. It's so intimidating. So I'm excited about trying.
We have a great question. I'm
Ooh,
curious to hear both Catherine and Melissa's. Thank you, by the way, Melissa.
yeah.
I'm curious to hear both Catherine and Melissa's process of becoming part of the world that many of us are told to be in, but not of. Growing up in conservative fundamentalist high control spaces, I've continued to feel like an alien who has come from another planet much of the time when interacting with trying to be friends with people in spaces outside of the church and all, and an all-encompassing religious background. Do you still have moments of feeling like the current reality isn't real, being in the world?
I so relate with the alien concept. I remember feeling that way of just like I specifically about trauma of like nobody gets religious trauma. Like I cannot talk about it unless I'm talking very specifically to somebody in the religious trauma world. Nobody gets it. Just like it just it just yeah, it was just like such a that weird feeling and having to teach myself how to have friends and like how to have normal conversations, teaching myself how to have small talk, um, learning, feeling like I don't know how to read the room. I don't know what's going on. I think that was a joke,
Mhm.
but I'm not exactly sure what the joke is. And yeah, just funny. I have a story. Did I put the story in my book? I don't know if I should put the story in my book. I think I put it in a version of my book. But I went to a club and was like, I want a kissing experience. And so I just kissed a bunch of strangers one night. And even though I learned things for sure, but it was more just like I just have to do this. I need to get experience and I need to figure out how to do this and try it out and be safe, yes. um, but I feel like we got to learn how to laugh at ourselves and recognize it's not our fault that this happened. It will make a wonderful story later. It will. Talking about the awkward moments of trying to figure out, and there's still things that I'm still uh, people make pop culture references from the 80s or 90s. I still miss so many of them because I just wasn't allowed to watch TV or listen to music or read a lot of the books. And so um, I still miss a lot of that stuff. And now it's just like, oh, well, whatever.
Right, right.
It'll come to me or
Yeah.
it won't be that important.
Back
Yeah.
back to that letting yourself be uncertain and not knowing about things. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a good story about that, Melissa, but maybe there's another thought you have. But I remember that scene when you were in New York City, I think it was,
Mhm.
with Kennedy children.
Oh,
That's
that was in Boston. Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah, and I tried to make friends and it didn't work out well at all. But I mean, just to underscore Catherine's experience, like you just don't no television, no books, no music. I mean, I still couldn't tell you like who the Rolling Stones are necessarily or whatever, and I certainly don't know how to use a bong or whatever, and you just have to like you have to decide what's important to you. And so like smoking pot, once I tried it once, I was like, okay, that is not important to me. But I really wanted to like experience sex and I wanted to experience movies. And so I watched every movie I could get my hands on. Oh, okay. So, okay. So you're not there in the book yet. I won't spoil the whole Kennedy thing. Okay, because it's a funny I thought I was going to make my first real world friends, and I thought I was going to have sex, and I thought I was going to drink for the first time, and it really did not work out like I thought. So I'll just leave it there. But I think I always tell people you kind of have to triage because you're always going to have big holes in your experience that it just you can't make up all of that lost time. So decide what's important for you and pursue that. And then like Katherine said, it's a great story for later. You can kind of make a joke out of the holes in your knowledge for a lot of the other stuff of like, hey, well, I was raised in a cult, so I don't know that.
Yeah, I think your comment, Catherine, about not knowing how to read the room, not knowing, like, it's not so much that you don't know the reference, the cultural references about a joke, but that there's a joke going on. I mean, I remember being in book publishing, working with a literary agent in New York City and with one of the major agencies. And I'm this conservative book publisher, and he's this Jewish guy from New York I happen to know, and he's going on about something, and I'm interrupting him, and he says, "David, I'm doing a shtick." You're interrupting my shtick. I'm like, oh,
Interrupting
oh,
his
sorry.
shtick. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. But that's a fun discovery. And when people are graceful with you, which they are, so many people who are in the world, that world that we're not supposed to be in, perhaps, are actually beautiful human beings, which is another discovery, a fun discovery that you can make if you put yourself out there in the world.
For sure.
That's a wonderful thing. Hey, well, we're at an hour here, everybody. If you want to leave your thanks in the chat, I'll leave it open for a little bit longer, but thank you both. Again, go back up into the top of the chat. I'll leave it open for a minute or two here, and find Catherine and Melissa online, please. We're not just about selling books. We're about making connections and community. That's why this is fun. It is fun to do this format.
It's fun.
I enjoy it, and we will post this video, but just with the three of us showing. It won't be the others. There won't be anyone else. Won't be your comments. And if for those who weren't able to make it, or if you wanted to come back and check something out again later on, or send it to a friend, maybe, it's all about connections, your connections, and leaving a book review online, reaching out, liking and sharing something on social media. It all counts. It all adds up. Let's have a mindset of abundance here, and let's all stick together. We're on the same team. So thanks again, Melissa,
Thank you, everybody,
Catherine.
for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you, everybody.